Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Campaign Catch-Up, joined by CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody and host of the DC Debrief podcast, John Stolnis. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great.
I don't know what we're going to talk about this week, but we're here, so, you know.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Nothing going on.
Nothing.
My gosh, the debate I was out last week, and so I kind of was coming back into the fold here this week, and just the deluge, the flood of reactions to this thing. First, I just want to get we haven't had a chance on this segment to react to it. So let's get your guys' reactions. David, I'll start with you. I mean, even Democrats are coming out and admitting that it was not a good performance, which is something that usually they try to spin this, the spin room after these things, they'll find some positives and try to spin it. But that was not the case this time.
No, I mean, let's start with the obvious. It was disastrous. And then we go on from there. A couple of quick observations, and I'll make it brief because there's a lot to say, but, why just, pile on at this point. For a few months now, I've been talking about how the Biden administration has been gaslighting Americans. And this is a great Exhibit A example of exactly what I was talking about. They would talk about how the economy is just doing great from a PDF standpoint. And people are like, really? I don't know about that. And then they would just continue on with different examples. And then when it came to Biden's age, no, he's fine. The guy can do, gymnastics and cartwheels and arithmetic backwards. And he's great. No, he's not. And we saw that at the debate. We knew it all along. And it was, once again, back to don't gaslight us. And the jig is up. And it kind of goes to a larger issue of, I don't want to make it so bold as to talk about like this Nixon Watergate cover up, but there has been a cover up going on at the White House. They have been covering for Biden. And now the whole world sees exactly what folks that, don't have a liberal media point of view have been seeing all along. So there's that. So that's out of the bag. Beyond that, let's remember there's a reason this debate was in late June. The Democrats that I'm talking to, operatives, all know one thing, which is that they are concerned deep down about Joe Biden, and they needed to have this debate now. They were hoping Joe Biden would pass the test and change the dynamic of the race. Oh, he changed the dynamic of the race, but not for good, for bad, because the reason this debate was in June, guys, and here's the dirty little secret, is that there are a lot of Democrats out there that do not want to see Joe Biden run. And this was a way to basically cut to the chase. And it happened. And so what you saw from the John Kings and the Van Jones and the David Axelrods and the Rachel Maddows and onward, you saw it all pour out, on debate night. But that's just the liberal media. What's underneath all of that is this idea that Democrats really don't want Joe Biden to run. And so this was a chance to kind of weed him out. And now here we are. And so now the question just becomes, and we can get into this in a moment, but, where does Joe and Jill Biden go from here? Because ultimately it's up to them. Though in a way, if you think about it, it might not really be up to them if the donors have their say. We even know that donors are saying they want, some of their donors, big ones, want their money back. And so we'll see. There's so much more to unpack, but that's kind of a little bit of the gist of it going forward.
Yeah, a lot to unpack here going forward. John, what was your reaction and your kind of big points, takeaways from the debate last week?
Yeah, I agree with David. There's not a whole lot more piling on you can do, but I do think even though we have seen President Biden on the campaign trail struggle, even though he has been hidden by the White House for the first 3 years of his presidency, he hasn't sat down to do an interview with the New York Times, the Washington Post, any of the legacy newspapers. He just hasn't sat down to do any of those interviews. They've been trying to explain away why he hasn't been doing those things. It just, the worst fears of all all Democrats became realized on Thursday night. And I think I was curious. I was watching with my parents who live in suburban Philadelphia. So that is a battleground state and a battleground area in a battleground state. And they don't have any love for Trump, but they probably weren't voting for Biden anyway. But what they saw was something that would push them towards Donald Trump, unless somebody else jumped into the fray now for President Biden, because it didn't seem as though watching him there that he could do the job. And that's really what this comes down to. President Biden needed to show people, especially people in his base, but again, the moderate Republicans who aren't sure about Donald Trump and were hoping to see in President Biden someone that they could vote for, they saw someone who didn't inspire any confidence that he was capable of doing the job now, let alone over the next 4 years. And I think I wanted to watch MSNBC's reaction after the debate, so I flipped over to there because I was very curious if we were going to see spin or if we were going to see the same type of reaction that we were seeing online. For those of us who were following on Twitter or whatever social media platform you use, the reactions were coming in throughout the debate. And they were blunt in their assessment of how terrible it was, openly talking about the fact that the Democrats should probably consider finding another replacement. So it was one of those things that it wasn't surprising, but it was still shocking to see him so unprepared. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. And if I could just add a couple more things, which is that if you think about it for a second, this has nothing to do with policy anymore, right? This has to do with basic competency. Can you get up in the morning and just kind of be commander in chief? And the answer is no with Biden. And don't take my word for it. You now have Biden surrogates. These are surrogates of Biden coming out and talking to Axios and others saying that Biden does pretty well, wait for it, guys, between 10 and 4. What? So we have a president that is competent for 6 hours of the day, and that's the spin coming from his own people? Guys, we're in uncharted territory. We don't need a president that can work 6 hours barely. So if there's going to be any resignation announcement as it relates to the campaign, I'm assuming it'll come between 10 and 4. So anyhow, it's just sad. I'll be honest with you. It's just sad. I don't care what your political leanings are. And so there's that, plus the latest poll, which shows 55% of Democrats, not voters, not Republicans, not MAGA, 55% of Democrats want Joe Biden to no longer run. So I think I have that right, or do I have it? Is it 45%? The bottom line is I think it's 55% say that he shouldn't run anymore. But
that's a high number either way.
Yeah, even if it's 45-55, it might be the other way. The point is, if you've got half, let's call it half of Democrats saying their own candidate shouldn't run, I mean, guys, that's wrong.
The number is 46%, and it's up 10 points since February, yeah. And that's among Democrats, and that's the big number. It's 46% from 36%. And when you also look at that poll, I think it's important to also note the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. How many people believe he does not have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president? That number among all registered voters is 72%. And the other number that I'll point out there is, and this is a big deal, at the debate, which candidate presented ideas clearly? Biden, 21%, Trump, 47%. This is the number that I think is this next one that's going to really keep the White House up at night, appeared presidential. 28% for Biden, 46% for Donald Trump. Joe Biden has been hanging his hat on him being the more presidential candidate, and clearly the voters, after watching that, don't agree.
Yeah,
and John, you brought that up.
Ahead,
Dan, can I just quickly say, I'm glad you brought that up, John, because not to bury the lead, because Joe Biden no doubt is the lead. I'm not suggesting that what I'm about to say is the lead, but let's not forget, Donald Trump had a pretty darn good debate performance. I mean, when I say facts aside, because you're going to hear the liberals say he was lying about everything, which is not true. But let's put that aside just for a moment. I'm talking about stylistically. I'm talking about temperament, discipline. He was very, very, I've covered Trump for a very long time now. I've never seen him as good as he was the other night. He could have piled on. He could have taken cheap shots at Biden. He didn't. He took a couple, especially when it got to the golf game, which was hilarious. But overall, I mean, he was very, very disciplined, and he played it pitch perfect. He was Trump, and at the same time, he was able to stay focused. I thought the debate format helped Trump tremendously. Yeah. It got him to a place where, the crowd wasn't able to rile him up because there was no crowd. And I think it really worked well for him.
Well, and the microphone thing as well. You talked about that ahead of the debate, David. The fact that first of all, I actually loved that. I think all debates need to do this with the microphone trick, because there's nothing more annoying, at least in my opinion, than when they all start yelling, especially when it's like a primary debate. There's multiple candidates and they're all yelling at each other. It was really nice to have the mic just shut off, because you had to make a clear and concise point. And I think Biden got caught several times just meandering, and microphone gets shut off. There's no coherent point made, whereas that totally favors Trump, because Trump is usually a little more acerbic, with his commentary. He kind of short, quick statements that resonate with all of his fans and his voters. And so that, I think, format, as you were kind of alluding to ahead of time, David, really benefited Trump.
It really did. And I think ultimately, well, I don't think there's going to be another debate, first of all. I mean, I can't see that happening. I guess Biden's folks can ask for it again, but I doubt that'll happen. But we'll see. It was, yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, I want to turn to you now and ask you about this. David mentioned it, that it's kind of in Biden's hands, essentially. And we did have, and everyone, like you said, all those commentaries after it saying, he needs to step down. We need to go a different direction. Well, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton did come out over the weekend, made statements saying, hey, everyone has a bad debate. They tried to run some flack for him. So is that enough to did they quell that? Or, is Biden actually going to consider handing this thing over? Because ultimately you would think if he does not wish to do this, that it's going to be very difficult. How do you even go about that?
Right. So there's a number of different factors here. To answer your first question, I don't think that Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, whoever else coming out in publicly, James Clyburn was on the morning shows, Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia, was on the morning shows, all saying that Biden should not step down. But I think this goes beyond, and I don't think most Americans agree that this was just a bad debate performance. It's not as if he has been vibrant and energetic in the first 3 years of his presidency and just had one of those typical incumbent presidency bad first debates, which we know have happened throughout history. This was a confirmation of worst fears for Democrats. That's the thing that we all should be remembering here. Like, this isn't conservatives and Republicans piling on Joe Biden. This is a confirmation of what many people have been saying that people should be worried about. And Democrats are upset about the fact that it doesn't appear as though the White House was honest about what is truly going on with Joe Biden. Now, you can understand that they're trying to win an election. They just hope that their candidate rises to the occasion when he's called for. I think they felt like he would do that, like he did with the State of the Union. And, obviously there were things he said in the State of the Union which people are going to agree or disagree with, and some people didn't like how boisterous he was. But that speech was intended to make sure that his base understood that he had a pulse. This was not that, and that's the real issue. So the calls, like David said earlier, the donors are really going to play a large part in this, but it's ultimately going to come down to Jill Biden. I think the First Lady is really the only one that can get in the president's ear and tell him, you really need to step aside. We can't win with you as president. Now, I will say, in the polls that have come out just in the last day or two following the debate, I think it's still too early to get a sense as to what this means in terms of the true horse race here. But the polls don't appear to show that a different Democratic candidate would have any better luck against Donald Trump than Joe Biden at this point. However, when you're talking about the different governors that are possible, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, Gavin Newsom of California, obviously, the people who really are into politics know those folks. But generally speaking, nationwide, they're kind of a tabula rasa. Nobody really knows a whole lot about these guys. And so a lot of the polling that's out there, if the Biden administration is saying our guy is still the best candidate to beat Donald Trump, I don't think that necessarily holds water, because so many of the other candidates are unknown. So now, okay, in the truncated time, the 5 weeks that you have until Democrats were gonna do the roll call before the convention rolls around, is there enough time to coalesce around one candidate? How do you do that? What are the mechanisms you put in place? Do you have one or two debates between now and then so that you can kind of coalesce around a winner in those debates? And how do the delegates work out if you're not going to be doing this at the convention? You have to do it before the convention so that you can get on the ballot in Ohio. It's just there's a risk reward here with keeping Biden as the nominee or trying to figure someone else out. And I think that's the discussion right now that's happening in Democratic circles, which is the more perilous path.
And before you hop in, David, I mean, we talked about this earlier on in this segment series, and Michelle Obama checks a lot of these boxes, but I mean, I don't even know if she wants to do it. Doesn't seem like she's expressed any interest in doing it. That would solve a lot of those problems that you brought up, John, as far as do we know them? Yep. Does America know? Obviously, America knows Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. And the press loves her and all that stuff. So you check a lot of boxes there, but how do you get that done, especially if she doesn't want to do it? And so these other candidates, I mean, that potential, it just seems like it's way too big of a hill to climb this late. And from the Republican point of view here, David, do they even want Biden to step down at this point? I mean, they keep calling for them. I mean, I would think that the opposite would be true if you're a Republican.
No, they want Biden to stay right there. They don't want Biden going anywhere. No, Biden's their ticket, Trump's ticket to the White House. Look, this is going to be a landslide if Biden is the nominee. I mean, Trump could win Minnesota. He could win Virginia. He could win New Jersey, for goodness sake. There's even talk now. I mean, he's within 2 points in New York at this point. I'm not sure if I believe that one. But look, it's going to be nasty for Democrats if Biden's the nominee. Here's the thing. Here's the truth of the matter. We just don't know, right? We have no idea. Has the terrain shifted? Yes, but it's not shifted, it's shifting. So we don't know where it's going to land exactly. It is up to Joe and Jill Biden. On a side note, shame on Jill Biden. Many have called it elder abuse. I won't go that far, but I will say simply this. You know your husband, to put him out there like that. That's tough, guys. That's a separate podcast. That's a separate discussion we can have another time. But you know your loved one. Would you put your father or mother or brother or sister or husband, wife out there like? Absolutely not. You know the answer. I know it too.
Well, let me just add. I just want to add to that, David, because there's a quote from Barack Obama. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, that he said before Joe Biden ran against Trump the first time. He said, "You don't have to do it, Joe," and that was a reported quote. And it was him at that time saying, like, "Hey, you've been the VP. You've had this great long political career. You don't have to drive." Because remember what people say about the presidency. You always look at George W. Bush from the first day in office to the last day. Look at Barack Obama from the first day to the last day. The aging that takes place. Yeah. Now, I will say Trump, I'm not sure what he's doing, but he didn't look any different to me.
That's got to be something with orange spray tan.
Yeah.
I think. But beyond that, look, here's the thing. Biden, there's so much to say here. Let me just say this. We're talking, not we, but the national discourse has been, how does Biden get out of this if he gets out? What's his path to save face? First of all, why are we talking about that? I mean, I understand that's the political angle, but what about the fact that he should be getting out for the good of America because there's no basic competency there? But beyond all of that, I think the way he gets out, because you're going to have to, he's very stubborn. He just is. That's not me saying that from an analysis standpoint. These are his best friends and people that know him. He's very, very stubborn. So you have to convince him that there's a way out. Here's his way out. His way out is to come out and say, look, folks, look, this isn't malarkey, right? He'll come out and say, I beat Trump. I took him down in 2020. I came in. We did X, Y, and Z, and then he'll talk about his blueprint for the economy, the PDF. He'll go yada, 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 how great the economy was, even though we know that's not true. But he'll say it anyhow. And then he'll say, look, age beats all of us. In this case, age has caught up to me, and I've got to ride out into the sunset. It's been a pleasure. I think that's the best thing he can do, to say, I beat Trump, and I set this nation towards a better place, even though I don't know how many people are going to buy it. But if he buys it, maybe that's all that matters. Well, also, real quick, as to what happens with the candidate, if I'm actually forced to choose kind of what I think is going to happen, I think he's going to resign. I think he's going to resign, not as president, obviously, but as a candidate for president. Why do I say that? Because this situation is not just a crisis that can blow over. John, as you were saying, it's going to get worse. I mean, every day this will get worse because he'll be a day older. And this has been a problem for 3 years. Now it's not going to go away. It just isn't. And he's going to have to campaign. And so it's just going to get worse. So therefore, what is the out? I just kind of explained what I think the out could be. And then who does it become? Look, the odds-on favorite here to replace him is Kamala Harris. I know people are going to say, oh, gosh, and they're going to shrug their head and say she's less popular than him. True. But she would have access to the war chest. She'd be the only one that would have access to the money. And that's very important at this point. And the other part of this is, if he gets out, does he in that speech say, I want my delegates to support Kamala? If he does that, then it's Kamala. If he doesn't do that, then we're in free-for-all territory. And then we're looking at Gavin Newsom in California. We're also looking at Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, too. J.B. Pritzker as well in Illinois. Remember, it's important, guys, to understand that when it comes to the delegate process, you have to win a majority of the 4,000 delegates. And so basically all these candidates, if this were going to be the case, would all be campaigning for delegates. And those big states are going to stick together. Gavin Newsom would have the big California delegation. J.B. Pritzker would have Illinois. Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan, not so much. The point is that the bigger the state, the better your chances. That's important to understand.
Yeah, and I'll just add to your point about the exit ramp potentially for Biden, the messaging that he can kind of go out on top, as the one who beat Trump, saved democracy for, that's right. The way the Democrats like to message it. I think he could also add in to say, hey, my wife, Jill, at the urging of my family, like they want me around here in the I think that would be very respectable. I would respect that decision. Yeah. I think most people would respect that decision. And regardless of what you think about him politically, even if it was a politically motivated decision, I think that would really resonate with Americans. Who doesn't think about their later years and think, I want to spend that with my family? I think that would resonate with a lot of people.
Also, if I could, sorry, John, I just want to quickly just say one last thing. He could also say, look, I love my country so much that, let's be honest. He could say, look, guys, folks, I'm being serious here. He could say, look, of course I would love to be president from a personal, perspective, from a selfish perspective, but I care about this country too much. And it's important that, we move on because, I'm struggling with some stuff. So the point is that he could just say, I'm doing it for democracy. I'm doing it for the country. I'm doing it for America. Look, that's as best you're going to get. That's as best you're going to get, I think.
John?
Yeah, I'm wondering, how Congressman Dean Phillips is feeling right now. I mean, he was the only Democrat to openly challenge really President Biden during the nominating process. He has to feel a little bit of vindication here, And I think I'm going to use kind of like a sports version of this. When your team is getting ready to make a trade with another team for players, if you should if you feel uneasy about the trade you're going to make, it's probably benefiting the other team, right? So if you're a Republican and you feel better about Biden in there, then if the Democrats know that, then they should want to make a change, right? If Biden staying in the race makes Trump feel better, makes Republicans feel better about their chances, then they should absolutely be looking at making a change here, because I think, David, you're right. Stylistically, Donald Trump did a great job in the debate on Tuesday night. I think even he realized that if he really pounced on, and he was harsh on Biden at different times for different things, but I think within the scope of what you would see in a debate, but Trump was not solid in a number of different policy areas. So just flat out didn't answer a couple of questions and tried to dance around them and sounded kind of ridiculous at different points. So Democrats, I think they should not be wanting, and I believe most Democrats don't want to give Donald Trump a free pass in these different debates. And I think that's what would happen moving forward if Joe Biden stayed in the race here.
All right, guys. Last question here. We keep talking about it every time we're in here. Has there been any movement on the Trump VP? I'm not going to say it because I hate that term so much. Trump's vice presidential candidate. Any change on that front, or what do you guys still have as your top couple options?
No new names. John, I don't know if you're hearing anything, but no, it's still that J.D. Vance, Tim Scott, possibly Marco Rubio. I don't see the Rubio thing. Elise Stefanik, maybe. Once again, I think this is a two-man race. It's J.D. Vance or Tim Scott. But I still go with J.D. Vance. I haven't heard anything else. The word on the street is about the same, John Stolnis.
Yeah, I agree. There's no new names, and I thought we might get some hints at the debate, because he said the person that he has picked would be there. But I think just about everybody that we've been talking about was there. So we should have really seen that coming from a mile away. We should have seen that coming.
Yeah. All right, well, gentlemen, as always, appreciate you spending a few minutes here breaking down everything that's going on. Obviously, an eventful last week, and I'm sure we're going to only see things heat up some more. So, David Brody, John Stolnis, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, John.